Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I had just finished nursing school and was working my first year at the local hospital. My grandmother had been my biggest supporter throughout my education. She'd even helped me pay for my textbooks when money was tight. She lived just a few hours away, and I'd visit her every other weekend. We'd spend hours talking about my patients and how much I was learning. She always said she was proud that I was following in her footsteps, as she had been a nurse during World War II. That day, I had just finished a lovely morning with my boyfriend, now husband, when I got the call from my mother. My grandmother had suffered a sudden heart attack. Despite being rushed to the hospital, she didn't make it. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I needed some time to process everything, so I decided to walk home instead of calling a cab. The walk was about 30 minutes, and I spent most of it trying to hold myself together. I kept thinking about how I was supposed to visit her that weekend, how we had plans to go through her old photo albums. Now those plans would never happen. I was almost home when I passed this overweight man standing on his doorstep. What happened next still makes my blood boil. He called out to me, demanding that I smile for him. When I politely declined, he persisted, telling me to cheer up because it might never happen. I responded curtly that he was too late for that. Still not taking the hint, he continued to harass me, suggesting that I would look prettier if I smiled. At this point, I snapped. I explained to him that I had just received news of my grandmother's death half an hour ago, and I was barely keeping myself from crying. I told him how I thought I was doing an okay job of keeping my grief hidden, but apparently not, and sarcastically apologized for my facial expression offending him and not being pretty enough for his viewing pleasure. Instead of showing any remorse, he had the audacity to tell me to calm down and claim there was no need for me to react that way. This only fueled my anger further. I asked him if he was joking, pointing out that I was just trying to mind my own business while he was the one who decided to tell a complete stranger, a grieving woman no less, that her face wasn't good enough for him. He tried to defend himself by saying he didn't know about my situation and was just trying to be friendly. This gave me the perfect opportunity to make my point. I explained that was exactly the problem. He didn't know because he was a complete stranger, and my emotions and face were none of his business. I suggested that next time he sees someone looking miserable, he should consider that they might have a good reason for it and leave them alone. I also advised him that if he doesn't like looking at someone's face, he should try looking somewhere else instead of sharing his unwanted opinion. I finished by calling him an absolute moron. All he could manage in response was a mumbled apology, still calling me love even then. As I walked away, I heard his front door slam shut. Through my peripheral vision, I could see several of his neighbors standing in their gardens, having witnessed the entire exchange. One elderly woman even gave me an approving nod as I passed by. I finally made it home and broke down crying. Later that evening, my boyfriend came over with takeout and comfort movies. While we were sitting on the couch, he told me that the incident had apparently become the talk of the neighborhood. The man's wife had been home the whole time and heard everything through their open window. According to local gossip, she gave him quite an earful about his behavior, and he was now the subject of considerable ridicule among the neighbors. It all started when I lost my office job. With a mortgage to pay and bills piling up, I needed to think outside the box. I had always enjoyed yard work. It was therapeutic, seeing the immediate results of your labor. So I bought some basic equipment and started offering my services locally. The turning point came when I helped an elderly veteran with his yard for free. His gratitude was genuine, and it got me thinking, what if I could help people while also making content that could support me? That's how my channel was born. I'd find properties with overgrown yards, offer free mowing services in exchange for letting me record the transformation and share these stories online. It worked better than I ever imagined. Last week, I spotted this modest house with an obviously neglected yard. The grass was knee-high, and you could tell it hadn't been maintained in months. I knocked on the door And this sweet elderly lady answered. She must have been in her mid-80s. I introduced myself and explained my offer to help with her yard for free in exchange for recording the transformation for my channel. The old lady looked at me with a mix of suspicion and hope. She told me how she'd been trying to find someone affordable, but everyone charged too much these days. She mentioned her arthritis prevented her from doing it herself anymore. I assured her that I genuinely wanted to help people, and that the videos helped support my work. When I asked if she was interested, she eagerly agreed, but double-checked if I really didn't want any payment. I confirmed that all I needed was permission to record the transformation. I spent the next 4 hours working on her yard. The transformation was incredible, from an overgrown mess to a perfectly manicured lawn. The old lady kept bringing me water and couldn't stop thanking me. The video went viral, getting millions of views in just a few days. I decided to visit her again to share some of the earnings since the video did so well. When I arrived, she was sitting on her porch. I thanked her for letting me share her yard transformation and explained how well the video had done, offering to share some of the earnings with her. The old lady's eyes welled up with tears. She called me an angel and mentioned she had just been telling her neighbor about my kindness. That's when I heard the screen door of the neighboring house slam. This middle-aged woman came storming across the yard like a tornado. Karen started yelling at me, demanding that I do her yard next, right that moment. When I politely explained that I had other appointments but could check my schedule, she became even more aggressive. She insisted that since I did her neighbor's yard for free, I had to do hers too, claiming it was only fair. I tried to explain how I choose which yards to work on based on various factors, but before I could finish, she cut me off by shouting to her boys. She commanded her 2 adult sons to get my equipment. Before I could process what was happening, her sons jumped into the back of my truck and started roughly pulling out my expensive mowing equipment. I yelled at them to stop, explaining it was private property. Karen smugly retorted that if I wanted to play favorites, they would just take what they needed. I immediately called the police while recording everything on my phone. The sons had already damaged one of my mowers, getting it down, and were dragging it across their driveway. The police arrived within minutes. After taking statements and seeing my video evidence, they arrested Karen and her sons. She ended up serving 6 months in jail. Her sons got community service, 500 hours each of lawn maintenance for the local park district. The old lady still sends me cookies every time I visit to maintain her yard, which I now do regularly for free. Her yard transformation video hit 10 million views, and the follow-up video about the entitled neighbor incident got even more attention. The comment section was filled with people sharing their own stories about entitled neighbors. Karen's house is now the only one on the street with an unkempt yard, since no lawn service in town will work with her after the incident went viral. After working in tech support for over a decade, I finally landed a position as a systems engineer at a major corporation. The job came with a significant pay raise, which meant I could finally move out of my cramped studio apartment into something more comfortable. I found this nice 2-story apartment building in a quiet neighborhood, perfect for someone like me who often had to be up at 5 a.m. for early morning system maintenance. Everything was peaceful for the first 6 months until she moved in. A single mother with 2 teenage boys who lived in the unit above mine. From day one, she made it clear that she wasn't interested in being a considerate neighbor. When the moving company accidentally scratched her door, she screamed so loudly that the entire building could hear her. I asked if everything was all right, but she rudely told me to mind my own business and that she was handling it. That was my first interaction with her, and things only went downhill from there. Her boys would constantly run up and down the stairs, slam doors, and blast their video games at full volume. But I tried to be understanding. They were teenagers after all. One afternoon I was heading out to grab my mail when I saw her boys throwing water balloons from their balcony at passing cars. I called up to them, warning that they shouldn't be doing that as someone could get hurt. Karen stormed onto her balcony and started yelling at me for telling her boys what to do, claiming they were just having fun. When I pointed out they could cause an accident, She mockingly asked if I was an expert on parenting and made a snide comment about me not having any kids of my own. I decided to avoid confrontation after that, but things got significantly worse when summer vacation started. Her boys would stay up until 2 or 3 a.m. blasting music and watching movies at full volume. After 3 nights of barely getting any sleep, I went up to talk to them. I politely asked if they could turn down the volume since I needed to be up early for work. Karen immediately got defensive, stating that they paid rent just like me, and her boys deserved to enjoy their summer vacation. When I tried to mention the after 10 p.m. quiet hours, she threatened to call the police if I didn't stop harassing them. Left with no choice, I reported them to the complex security. The next day, I had to leave for a business trip to oversee a major system upgrade at one of our satellite offices. The project was supposed to take 2 weeks, but got extended due to some complications. When I returned 3 weeks later, there was an eviction notice on my door. Confused and angry, I gathered all my expense reports, hotel receipts, and travel documentation before heading to the leasing office. The agent told me that they'd received multiple noise complaints about my unit over the past month, and I had been unresponsive to all their notices. I explained that I'd been out of town and showed them all my travel receipts and expense reports. We were going through the dates when the property manager got a call. She told the agent that I was doing it again, saying the music was too loud. I pointed out that this was impossible since I was right there in the office and my apartment was empty. The agent, looking at my receipts, noted that according to these, I was in Denver when most of these complaints were filed. The 3 of us went to my apartment. Complete silence. Not even a clock ticking. The property manager looked embarrassed, and the agent was furious. Back at the office, they pulled up Karen's file. Turns out she had multiple warnings for various violations: unauthorized pets, late rent payments, and harassing other neighbors. They immediately revoked my eviction notice and served her with one instead. While reviewing the security footage to document her false complaints, they discovered she had been letting her boys sneak into the community pool after hours through a fence gap. That was the final nail in her coffin. Instead of a 14-day notice, she got a 72-hour eviction order for multiple lease violations. 3 days later, I watched from my window as she and her boys loaded their things into a moving truck, screaming about how unfair everything was and how she'd sue the complex. The property manager simply stood there, holding a thick folder of documented violations, security footage screenshots, and complaint records. The peaceful sound of silence never felt so sweet. I never planned to work at a theme park. My dream was to become a marine biologist, but life had other plans. After my dad lost his job and my mom's medical bills started piling up, I had to put college on hold. The theme park was hiring, offering decent pay and benefits, so I jumped at the opportunity. I started in the custodial department. I took pride in maintaining the park's cleanliness and helping guests find their way around. My supervisors noticed my efficiency and work ethic, always finishing my tasks ahead of schedule. Little did I know this would lead to an unexpected career change. One morning, my manager called me into his office. The resort's dining area was severely understaffed, particularly in the cashier department. Given my track record of quick learning and efficiency, they wanted me to train as a cashier. I wasn't thrilled about the change. Dealing with money and cranky guests wasn't exactly my idea of fun, but I couldn't really say no. They paired me with a trainer, an older guy who'd been working there for years. Despite his constant flirting and dad jokes, he was actually a great teacher. He had this way of making even the most tedious tasks seem entertaining. When I first arrived for training, he joked about this being cash register boot camp and told me not to cry too much. I played along, telling him I just wanted to get it over with. He laughed at my forced enthusiasm, saying it was perfect for starting the day. The register system was overwhelming at first. 5 pages of items, each containing dozens of products from different restaurants and the bakery store. My trainer assured me I'd eventually memorize everything, but looking at the endless list made me doubt that. They gave me a special tag that said, "I'm earning my ears to wear over my name tag." Most guests were understanding when they saw it. Some even offered encouragement, like this one nice guest who told me not to worry, saying everyone has to start somewhere and that I was doing great. I thanked her sincerely for her patience. Things were going smoothly until she arrived, a thin woman with a sharp nose and an even sharper attitude. She dumped a pile of items on my counter: food, souvenir mugs, decorative cups, and other merchandise I wasn't familiar with yet. My trainer had to help me locate different items in the system, which apparently was too much for her to handle. She demanded that I hurry up, saying that some people had lives. I apologized and explained that I was still in training, but she cut me off, saying she didn't care and had other things to do. Something in me snapped. If she wanted to be rude, I could play that game too. I picked up her first item, a souvenir mug, and examined it like I was studying an ancient artifact. Turning it over in my hands, I inspected every angle with exaggerated concentration. Each item got the same treatment. I moved with the speed of a tortoise taking a nap, maintaining direct eye contact with her whenever possible. My trainer was struggling to keep a straight face, occasionally turning away to hide his snickering. The woman's face grew redder with each passing second. She started yelling about how ridiculous this was and demanded to speak to my manager. I told her I'd be happy to call one after finishing with her items. I continued my glacial pace, watching her fume as I meticulously pressed each button on the register. When I finally announced her total, she practically threw her credit card at me. I picked it up with the same deliberate slowness, carefully inserting it into the card reader like it was my first time seeing such technology. When I asked if she wanted her receipt, she just demanded her card back. I slid both the card and receipt across the counter with a bright smile, telling her to have a magical day. She responded with some angry noises I couldn't even understand and stormed off, leaving a trail of fury in her wake. As soon as she was out of earshot, my trainer burst into laughter. He told me it was beautiful and that he'd never seen someone handle a difficult guest with such dedication to quality service. I responded that I was just following guest requests since she asked me to be thorough with her purchase. The rest of my training went much smoother, and I eventually became one of the fastest cashiers in the resort. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.